Working with poems on the SAT is very different from the way you work with them in school. With your English teacher, you have lots of time to analyze the poem, looking for deeper ideas like symbolism and metaphor. You might study the rhyme, rhythm, and meter of the poem. Maybe your teacher gives you background information on the poet or the time in which the poem was written. In fact, you may spend a week or more on just one poem in class. But on the SAT, we don't have that kind of time. At most, you've got 2 minutes per passage to read and answer the question, and everything you need for that answer is in the poem or the short introduction to it. The SAT cannot expect you to come into the test with prior knowledge about the passages. But what about the beauty of the writing or the deeper meaning of the lines? Well, nobody cares, not on the SAT. You will be given a short poem and a specific question. Your job is to find the answer to that question and only that question. The biggest mistakes that students make on SAT poetry questions is worrying about stuff that doesn't matter. If you're reading a poem that's been around for 300 years, then yes, there probably is some deeper symbolic meaning that makes this poem worth talking about. But if you need to know it for the question, then the SAT will explicitly give it to you in the intro. The first strategy for SAT poems is to accept the fact that there will be a lot of the poem that you don't understand. To help me prove my point, we're going to look at Jabberwocky, a very famous poem by Lewis Carroll from his book Through the Looking Glass, which most people know better as the sequel to Alice in Wonderland, the well-known children's book. I'll admit that this poem is a little different from what you would see on the SAT. It's too long and has very weird vocabulary. In fact, Jabberwocky is the most famous nonsense poem in the English language. What does that mean? Well, Lewis Carroll literally made up half the words in the poem. Some of them have become real words that people use every day, but at the time they were completely made up. They were not in any dictionary, and even now most of them do not have a real definition. But that's why I think this poem is so great for showing off the SAT strategies that we need for all poems, as well as, frankly, all SAT passages. I'm literally making it impossible for you to understand everything we're about to read, but it won't matter. You will understand enough to get the main idea of the poem. I promise. Let's take a look. Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. 'Twas brillig, and the slivy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Beware the jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the jubjub bird, and shun the frumious bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the jabberwock, with eyes of flame, came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1-2, and through, the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day, callooh callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slivy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Are you confused? Me too, but we're in good company. In the book, the very next paragraph after this poem is Alice responding to what she just read. It seems very pretty, she said when she had finished it, but it's rather hard to understand. You see, she didn't like to confess even to herself that she couldn't make it out at all. Somehow it seems to fill my head with ideas, only I don't exactly know what they are. However, somebody killed something. That's clear at any rate. That's a dumb summary, our main reading strategy. This poem and paragraph, from a book that is 150 years old, is a perfect encapsulation of the main SAT reading strategy that you should use in the present day. This is incredible. And Alice says something else that is very important if you want to improve your reading score. Somehow it seems to fill my head with ideas, only I don't exactly know what they are. Just like Alice, you need to accept the fact that you understand more of the poem, more of the passage than you could possibly explain in words. Some people are so afraid of what they don't know that they completely ignore all the things they do know. You cannot let your fear of the unknown make you reread a dozen times or second guess your answers. Let's take another look at the poem and see how we can come to the same conclusion as Alice without a deep understanding of what we're reading. The first stanza is almost entirely nonsense. All of these words are completely made up, but you can't start off this question panicking that you are missing something important. Maybe you did, but there's not much you can do about unknown vocabulary words in the moment. But maybe lines like these are just filler. Many SAT passages have filler lines where they overwhelm you with dense jargon that doesn't really matter for the main point. You have to learn to just move on. If stuff like this matters, we'll come back to it later when we start looking at the answer choices. There are even more made-up words in the next 3 stanzas. Some of them, like jabberwock and bandersnatch, are proper nouns that are basically character names. If we keep seeing the name, we should assume it's an important part of the story. So jabberwock is probably important, while bandersnatch probably isn't. Even in SAT passages that aren't poems, we often have new names that we've never heard before. People, places, animals, enzymes, molecules, diseases, medicines. Whatever it is, if it's an important character, you'll see the name again, so don't worry about every single new name. Also, if the character matters, the poem or passage will tell us what we need to know about that character. I don't need to know what a Jabberwock is before taking my SAT because the poem tells me it's bad. Beware the Jabberwock, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. We see it as a foe or enemy with eyes of flame. It's obvious from context that the Jabberwock is some sort of monster that's bad. And remember that connotation is very helpful when we're writing dumb summaries. Now in school, your teacher might have to give you some background information that gives a poem a deeper meaning, maybe something about the poet's biography or the time in which the poem was written. But the SAT can't do that. They don't expect you to come to your SAT with any background knowledge about these topics. If there's something you need to know about the Jabberwock, it will either be in the poem or in the introduction provided by the SAT. Other words in this poem are clearly adjectives that describe words that we know pretty well, like the vorpal sword, manxome foe, and tulgy wood. You can usually ignore these new words too. I don't need to know what vorpal means because I know what a sword is. I call these words enhancers because they give a little extra meaning to a line, but that meaning is there even without the word. Again, trust that you're understanding the simple ideas, even if you don't understand how the enhancer makes the ideas more complex. We can see this in the stanza at the top right, where we have some enhancers, but the simple idea is written in clear, plain English. He used the blade to kill the monster, cut off its head, and go back to wherever he came from. This right here should be your main takeaway from this lesson and from poetry questions on the SAT. No matter how confusing the rest of the poem or passage, the main ideas will almost always be written in clear, simple, easy to understand English. Similarly, we can sometimes take a good guess at the meaning of a mystery word because of the surrounding words. Poems tend to be repetitive, so if we hit a word we don't know, odds are good that there's a word we do know nearby. In the second to last stanza, there are a lot of words I don't know, but I do know what joy is. Plus, we know that they just killed the monster, which is probably good. So frabjous probably means joyful. It's a repeater word. In fact, a lot of authors use repeaters intentionally in poems and literature because it helps them make their point. It's possible I'm wrong and frabjous means something completely different, but we have a lot of evidence that makes our guess a very good bet. For poetry questions, you are going to need to get used to placing smart bets without complete certainty. So how much would you bet on Alice's dumb summary? Even looking at this poem a second time, I think Alice got pretty much the entire main idea. Maybe we add in that the something was bad so that killing it was good. Connotations are usually easy to find in poems, and they tend to match with the correct answers pretty well. But let's see, here's an SAT-style question that could accompany this poem. As is typical for poetry questions, they just want the main idea. Sometimes they'll ask for the main purpose of a specific line, but it's still going to be very general, very big picture. Right away, choices A and D seem wrong, because they do not match with our dumb summary. For choice A, is there a list of species in the tulgy wood? Yeah, I guess, but a lot of other stuff happens in the poem. Plus, we have no way of knowing if the list included all of the species in the forest. Those kinds of extreme answers are wrong whether we're dealing with a poem or just a regular SAT passage. Choice D also has extreme language because we don't know if the town cannot defend itself. In fact, it seems like the town can defend itself because somebody killed the monster. On the other hand, choice B captures our dumb summary because it does seem that the poem is about hunting the Jabberwock. But there are other strong words in this choice that we need to think about. Did the speaker convince the other character to kill the monster? No. The speaker says to beware the Jabberwock. He's saying to be careful, to be afraid of this creature. I have no evidence that there was some argument or debate where the hunter needed to be convinced. Choice C captures our main idea as well, but many people will be too afraid of the word vanquishes to pick it. Maybe that's a vocabulary word that you don't know, but you definitely should. To vanquish is to defeat. But even if you didn't know vanquish, you probably knew what convince means, so you should still be picking C because of process of elimination. And this gets to the main issue that most people have with poetry questions, or even any difficult passage on the SAT. They think they get the questions wrong because they don't understand the passage. But in my experience, most mistakes are from not understanding the answer choices. There might be lots of words you don't know in the passage, but there will be lots of words that you do know in the answer choices that you need to match with the lines in the passage. And in most cases, dumb summaries should be enough to get you there. So if you get a poetry question wrong, or really any SAT passage wrong, ask yourself why. Did you miss some key idea in the passage? Or did you miss an important word in the answer choice? Did you get it wrong because of words you didn't know or lines you didn't understand? Or did you get it wrong because you ignored a word that you knew well? Whatever the case, the next time you see a poem on the SAT, don't panic. It won't be any harder than the other types of passages. Just accept that there will be things that you don't understand, but they probably won't matter. Or, as Alice put it, the poem will fill your head with ideas, even if you don't exactly know what they are. Thanks for watching.